So what we want to do today in our final lesson on quadratics in this unit on quadratics is to solve quadratic word problems. There's no different strategy in solving any type of word problem. You always want to make sure you read the problem. You then go back, reread it, underline important words, identify what your variable is, your unknown, set up an equation and solve, and then make sure your answer makes sense. Now, let's just recall, we did this earlier. What expressions do we use for consecutive odd integers? Well, if x is the first odd integer, the second one is x plus 2. It's 2 more than that. And the third one is x plus 4, and we just keep going. Don't confuse the fact that these numbers, 2 and 4, are even, that they're not consecutive odds. So, for example, if the first one was 3, I have to add 2 to it to get the second one 5, and add 4 to it to get the third one 7. Okay, so let's solve these problems. The square of a number increased by 2 times the number equals 8. Find the number. So x is the number. The square of a number, x squared, increased by plus 2 times the number, 2x, equals 8. Now you have your quadratic equation. You're back to solving quadratic equations the same way, which is to set them equal to 0. Most of these will be able to be factored. So plus 4 minus 2, if I got that right. X is negative 4, and x is 2. Again, you're looking for 2 answers throughout this. And since they're word problems, you always have to go back and make sure that the answers are both acceptable. In this case, you're just looking for a number. You're fine. All right, next one. Length of a rectangle is twice its width. So W will be width, and the length is going to be 2W. Area is 50. Find the length and width. So formula, 2W times W equals 50. 2W squared equals 50. Divide by 2. W squared is 25. W is plus or minus 5. Okay? I disregard negative 5. So 5 is my width and 10 is my length. Okay? Next one. You should be familiar with the Pythagorean theorem. So let's just make sure. The Pythagorean theorem is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. This applies to a right triangle only. A and b are the legs, and c is the hypotenuse, which is the longest side, the diagonal side. Okay? So, I have 2 legs. One leg I'll call x. The other leg, one leg exceeds the other by 4, so that means x plus 4. The hypotenuse is 20, so my equation is x squared plus x plus 4 squared equals 20 squared. Remember, you have to FOIL x plus 4 so that you get x squared plus 8x plus 16 equals 400. 2x squared plus 8x minus 384 equals 0. Divide everything by 2. Now, again, you can use many different strategies to factor this. All right, and you can use a calculator to help you figure out what the zeros are. All right, but one strategy I do is if I have 192 and I were to do a prime factorization of it, okay, the prime factorization 1, 2, 3 is 2 to the 6 times 3. So I have some combination of 2's 6 times and a 3 in there. Okay? And I have to play around with what combination will multiply to 192 and add to a 4. Well, the numbers can't be that far apart because they have to come back to of 4. One is a positive and one is a negative. Okay? So in other words, it can't be 4 times 48, okay? Because that's too far of a difference. So maybe I got to bunch of these up and get 16 and bunch those up and get 12, and actually that's what it ends up working out to be. So I get 2 answers. You have to solve this all the way through, even though you know one of your answers is going to be unacceptable. So one leg is 12, the other is 16. Okay? The length of the shorter leg is then obviously the 12. All right, continuing on here. The family's bedroom is 5 feet longer than it is wide. So W is width. Length is W plus 5. Area. So I have W times W plus 5 is equal to 66. Remember, you always want to try to use only one variable if you can when solving any word problem. Not always possible, so that if you have more than one variable, then you have to use a system to solve it. Okay, please solve all the way through. We disregard the negative 11 so that we get 6 and positive 11 as the length and width of our bedroom, or the Smith bedroom. The sum of the squares of 2 consecutive even integers. So x is the first, x plus 2 is the second. The sum of the squares. So I square each one and add the result to get 164. Remember, this means to FOIL it, so you'll get x squared plus 4x plus 4, not 4x again, equals 164. I get 2x squared plus 4x minus 160 equals 0. Divide everything by 2. Makes it more manageable to factor so that I'm looking for numbers that are close to each other to multiply to 80. So I get x is negative 10 and a positive 8. Obviously, 8 and 10 are the only two that I accept. Now, one of the things I should have mentioned is you can always, the benefit of word problems, you could check your answer. The sum of the squares. Well, the square of the first is 64. The square of the second is 100. And that equals the 164 that we said they were equal to. Okay? And then lastly, the square of a number decreased by 5 times the number is 50. So x is the number. The square of a number decreased by 5 times the number equals 50. Bring everything over. Factor. Solve to get x is 10, x is negative 5. The reason to solve these all the way through is that you never know when you have one answer or two, and in this case, you have 2 answers. So that's why you always want to make sure you solve all the way through. Okay? So that was our lesson on solving quadratic word problems.